On day 21, we'll be looking around this area. We'll be basically exploring Death Valley National Park. When we get up in the morning, the electricity is off and the wind is blowing extremely hard, probably 50 or 60 miles an hour. Deborah the Explorer decides she's got to go down and harass the horses. We'll be covering a lot of the eastern side of the park today, and we'll be driving over 200 miles. This will be our route. As said, this is a huge park, the largest in the continental United States, and we'll be covering a large chunk of it today. We head out early in the morning so that we can cover as much as possible.
Turn right onto California 190 East.
This is a way out. It goes out to southwest. This would be like The wind is really kicking up the dust in the valleys, so it's hard to see across the valley to the mountains. We eventually arrive at Badwater Basin and to look around here for a few minutes. This is a low, flat place at the southern end of the valley. In places where there are a lot of salt and dirt, it breaks up into structures like this that are very jagged and hard to walk on. The white areas are salt, mainly sodium chloride. And especially this wide area that you can walk out on here, this is where the water normally collects. And that up there, that is sea level. And down here, we're standing on the lowest place on Earth in North America. There's some places lower in the Middle East. But this is 282 feet below sea level, or 85.5 meters. There are not many other places, maybe a handful, that you can stand at a lower elevation when standing on the salt. They have a raised structure here, platform, to keep you out of the water. There's always water here. It came from flowing over hundreds of miles away and thousands of years ago when it fell, and a fault line at the base here brings it out. This has the only place where you can see Badwater Basin snails. There's only a few hundred of them alive. The water is not poisonous, it's just extremely salty. And now it's time to head out and go look at other things. You can note as we drive along, this is a pretty desolate area with just a little bit of vegetation right along the road. But then you can also see snow on some of the top elevations, which are over a mile high. And now it's time to go to the Devil's Golf Course. This is formed out of salt and dirt, just like the structures at Badwater Basin. But you can see some of the crystals here of the salt. It's constantly changing as the salt expands and contracts in the heat. This used to be a lake bed that dried up and left the salts here. Now let's head on to someplace else. Our next drive will be Artist Drive. This is so beautiful. I really wanted to include the entire thing, but just didn't have time. This is worth the entire trip to Death Valley just to come and look at this. As we drive around, let's look at the beautiful change of colors everywhere we go. And now we come to what is called Artist Palette, because it has so many different colors here. Just look at how many different colors you can see here, from blues and yellows, reds, greens, oranges, browns, just about any color you can think of. The wind blowing along the ridge line blows off dust and looks like smoke almost. And now let's head on around the last part of this drive. This drive right here is worth the whole trip to Death Valley.
It's beautiful.
And now we're back out on the main road again and headed north along the mountains. Just before we get to where our hotel is, we passed the elevation sea level sign. And we're going to go on past our hotel and go to the Borax works. Just a few miles north of the hotel is the Harmony Borax Works, at least the ruins of it. Borax was used by housewives, dairy farmers, blacksmiths, meat packers, and more. It was considered to be white gold as the only mineral they found here that could be used commercially. The founder of the Borax Works was W.T. Coleman. It operated for only 4 years, 1884 to 1888. Life here was very crude, with shelters and tents being lived in most of the time. The ore was dumped in boiling vats separated from the muds and salts and then placed in cooling vats to crystallize, and then they could chip it off and use it to be sold. It would not crystallize above 120 degrees, so they had to shut down during the summer. Then they had to haul it 165 miles to the railway. They had special wagons built 16 feet long and 6 feet high. Front wheels were 5 feet in diameter, back wheels 7 feet in diameter, covered by a 1-inch thick iron tire 8 inches wide. Each wagon carried 11 tons of purified borax, and a water wagon carried 1,200 gallons of water. It weighed a combined total of 36.5 tons. They used mules to pull it since they were more adjusted to the desert and needed less water, and were pretty smart. 20 mules were hooked up in pairs of 2, and they stretched for 120 feet, making the entire assembly almost as 2/3 as long as a football field. The best mules were put in front and had bells on them to provide a ribbon for the pulling, and also to let other mules know the leaders were still out there. It took 2 workers to run a wagon, a teamster to take care of the mules, to run the jerk line, and to brake the first wagon, and then a swamper to keep all the other equipment working and to run the brake on the second wagon. The teamster often rode the first mule on the left. They used the jerk line to guide the mules. Only one line, not 2 reins. A steady pull and saying, "Yeah!" and they turned to the left. A jerk several times saying, "Gee!" they turned to the right. And now it's time to head back north past our hotel again and go to Zabriskie Point. Zabriskie Point is another overlook across Death Valley, the valley itself, from a high vantage point. And now it's lunchtime and time to head to the oasis for something to eat. The dust is really blowing in the valley and you can see it being kicked up. We saw a lot of dust devils but never could catch one on camera. When we get back to the ranch, we find out that the electricity is still out and so they can't cook any food. It'll be out for several hours, they said, usually 5 or 6 before they can even get a crew out from where they come from to look at the power. There's a Borax museum in the area also where they show old equipment like this old Dyna, which was a steam wagon they used to replace the 20 mule team. Since the electricity is out, there's no reason to hang around the hotel room. There's nothing to do. So we head out on a long trip running along almost the entire length of the valley, the Ubehebe crater. As we travel through the valley, we're on the right-hand side against the mountains, and we can't even see the mountains on the left-hand side. There's so much dust. We're now arriving at Ubehebe crater. This is an explosion crater that blew out about 2,000 years ago. As the magma rose in the ground, it hit water and the steam created a huge explosion here that covered 6 square miles with almost 150 feet deep of rock. It's 500 feet deep and a half a mile across. There are several craters here, and we look at the largest one. And now it's time to drive back down off the rim. As you can see, the black that is blown all over this area from the explosion, and head back to our hotel for the night. As we get back into the valley floor, you can see the dust even cutting off view of the mountains close by. And now we head back into our hotel for the night. Electricity has come on now, and so we're able to get into the hotel, and you see the wind blowing in the trees. We go to our hotel room to rest for a few minutes and to get the things offloaded onto the computer, and then we go back to eat at the 1849 restaurant before ending the day 21.